Okay, so I'm working for PulseSecure, and PulseSecure is for those who don't know the company. So we are producing a software, and in most cases, this is a remote access software. Of course, we have also other use cases to access the resources like NAG, for example, or Cloud Secure. But today I'm going to cover only a remote access because this is something which is very relevant to the network operators network, and this I think will be more interesting from your perspective. So network operators are not our direct customers, but of course the software for the remote access, I mean the VPN software is the most popular one, is normally installed on the customer premises, and then this software is strongly reliable on the network operator infrastructure, because if we want to access the resources which are remote to someone, then of course this traffic goes through the network. And let's maybe, I have only 3 slides, so my comments will be, my comments for the COVID situation will not be very extended. However, I think you will find it useful. So just to define the use cases, because, normally each customers have something called premises, right? So this is the wall, the border, or the fortress wall before the outside and inside world. And we are carrying the traffic that pass through this border. So goes from inside to outside or from outside to inside. And in the reality before the COVID, most of the employers inside of the customer networks were accessing the resources from inside. So this is the use case. So they, simply speaking, they were sitting in the offices, and the resources were in the same building in most of the cases in the data center, and all the traffic goes through the local networks to deliver the service to the end user. And we all know that during the pandemic world, especially in the mid-March, the situation has changed significantly. And even it was very interesting for me to listen my pre-speakers, for example, the Oliver Gasser, who presented a lot of statistics about how the traffic has increased over the time. And of course, we also, as a vendor, has noticed a big increase in traffic from the outside-in scenario. So the users in one day or couple of days were forced to leave the perimeter, to leave the fortress, and stay at their homes and try to work at their homes. It was a huge challenge, not only from the network operator perspective, but from the end customers perspective, because they need to change almost everything in days. And of course, a lot of companies already had the plans to create a mobile working environment, to move some services from premises to the cloud and so on. But this was the plans spread it for years, not for days. And now in one day or 2 days, when all the government announced that we will have the limited mobility, that we all should work from home and the offices were closed immediately, we need to adapt very quickly. So let's maybe in points investigate what are the impacts from our perspective. So normally, in March, especially in March, 90% of employers were sent home in day or 2. That was the situation in Poland, in Czech Republic, in Germany, but I'm almost sure that in Serbia was exactly the same. And before the pandemic, it was 20 to 18. So that was our estimation, that 80% of employees were working from premises, right, from the company networks, or inside of the fortress, let's say, and 20% was a remote user. And this has changed dramatically in day or 2. And the VPN implementations had some issues. Let's say there was a license issues, because normally the customers license this solution for 20%. Let's say 20%. This number is of course different for let's say the government agencies and for the standard private sector organization. But the license issues was not so important, because we overcome this license issue very quickly to generate a temporary license. But the performance issues was more important for us, because as you know, so the VPN boxes has a limited performance. This is similar to network boxes, to firewall boxes. They are meant to take some load, but this load increased dramatically in couple of days. So this was a significant issue. And Mr. Oliver said that from his perspective, that he noticed that the traffic of VPN has increased 2 times over the 200%. So I think it would increase much more if the vendors like us don't have if the customers don't have performance issues. I mean, if they scale the infrastructure appropriately, knowing that there will be a pandemic. Of course, no one knows that there will be a pandemic situation. However, some of the customers have disaster recovery plans that sometimes helps a lot. There are also some configuration dilemmas because most of the vendors support something called split horizon or split tunnel. So this means that some of the traffic goes directly to the service provider. The most important, like Zoom or WebEx or Webinar or Teams traffic. So when someone works from home, this is important to configure the network tunnels to allow some traffic to go directly. Because if all the traffic is tunneled via VPN to the central location, this brings a lot of challenge for the network operators from the ISP perspective to accommodate this increased traffic, but also from the VPN equipment performance perspective, that this is of course also a challenge. The other challenge, which is not maybe related to the network operation point of view, but lack of end user skills to change their work habits with remote access. And sometimes I compare this to the fire alarms. Sometimes, of course, we are not prepared for fire alarms, but we are trying to be prepared because each time, at least in Poland, in every office buildings, we are doing some theoretically or not real fire alarm, and we are practicing how we would behave when the real fire is there. So I think that we are not doing the same for the remote work. So in situation when all the employees need to change their habits, for example, how to access the services, that now they need to enable VPN, for example, maybe the services are somewhere else than from the perspective they are at the offices. So this is another change, and a lot of organization has already noticed this. Then another thing is lack of hardware, and some users needs to use their PC to access the resources. So this means that there is a rapid bring your own device implementation. From the network operator perspective, means that now we have a lot of more needs for network bandwidth from our homes than from the offices. But from the IT perspective, of course, this is a rapid change because in the security world, we are managing the risk, right? And this brings a lot of additional risk to the networks because if the user needs to use their PCs, we need to configure them. And of course, we need to accept some increased risk related to these computers. And yeah, as I already told, some security issues related to bring your own device, but there is also some secondary impact, I would say. So we are noticing that there is an accelerated interest in the public cloud services, or the customers are accelerating their moving their workloads to the public clouds right now. Why? Because they don't want to rely on the classic perimeter model. So they want to move the resources to the external world, to the public cloud, because in case of disaster like this, it's easier for them to present the services to the end user if they are not behind their perimeter, but they are behind or they are in the public cloud, environments. So simply speaking, the long-term plans, I mean, to make a workspace mobile, executed in days. So that's the reason why so many challenges was there, and that's the reason why in the network operations networks, the traffic has changed, the profile of traffic has changed, and we also confirmed that the VPN traffic has changed dramatically. It increased dramatically. So lesson learned. So what we do recommend for the customers, of course, to build a contingency and disaster recovery plans to be prepared for similar events. So it's not only related to the ISP part. So to have, of course, the appropriate pipe to the network, but also to be simply prepared from the network equipment part. So this, I mean, the VPN equipment and rest of the network equipment to accommodate the increased traffic from the outside world to the inside into the internal networks or the internal resources or internal data centers. Of course, some bigger customers have some disaster recovery plans, but they are targeted only for one site. So this disaster recovery site was created to accommodate the situation that there is a fire or a flood, but this is limited only for one site. But the COVID hit globally, right? All the world. So all the sites are affected at one time. So if the disaster recovery plan was created to address only one side disaster, so it didn't help too much. Next recommendation is to overscale the remote access infrastructure in terms of hardware and license, and of course to take care of the agreement with the network operators to be sure that the traffic that is needed in the remote for the remote access scenario when most of the employees are remote to the resources we are hosting in the data center is enough for us to accommodate these increased needs. Promote remote working as the alternative to on-prem workspace. So me personally, I prefer to work in the office. So I think that this is the preference of most of the employers. But we should promote an alternative way of working. So for example, let's say that one day in month, the people should start working at home. So they should try, they should get used to the resources, to their services, or to the VPN client or anything that is needed to actually be productive on the different conditions or when we change the workspace. That's another recommendation. And support bring your own device. This is not directly related to the network operator, but the people starting to work at home. And yeah, of course, starting to work at home means that there is not a direct border between our private and company lives, as mentioned previously, right? So that's the reason maybe that we have spikes or the traffic on the weekend. It's not flattened, so it's almost the same like on the work days. But we also should support bring your own device model to accommodate the increased needs for hardware when the traffic is generated, right? Or when the service is presented to the end user. And consider redefining your perimeter with cloud adoption and the SASE model. SASE means that this is the service access a secure access service edge model, which means that all the services or most of the services, most of the applications are now in the cloud, and we must define a secure way to access these applications in the world when the user is mobile, so they can access them from any location. So that's the lesson learned. But from the network operator perspective, we definitely confirm that this spike, this dramatic increase in the traffic was also because of the VPN traffic. And we also, as I said, I think that the spike would be even higher, even bigger, assuming that the network, the VPN infrastructure was pre-prepared for addressing these spikes in the traffic. Because as we all know, VPN or the tunnels are not so simple. They requires a lot of computing power on the hardware boxes, because there is encryption, there is tunneling, there are a lot of other things that needs to be done, which is different, for example, what the normal network equipment needs to be done without the encryption, for example. So they are more sensitive to be overloaded. And that's all from my side. So of course, we are the software vendor, so we have products that I can of course present, but I just wanted to only add a context about how the traffic has increased in the network environments from our perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chmielewski. Please stay with us because we have two questions for you.
Of course.
And I will read them both because they are connected. The first one says, did you notice hacking attempt of VPN users at home computers? And the second one is, did you notice security breach of company servers because VPN user home computer is not secure? So
Yeah, so we directly didn't notice that because we do not maintain the customer's environment. But what we noticed that the customers are afraid a bit much more about this. So they told us that they are really afraid that they have to actually, but they are very afraid to do that, to let the people to enter the environment from their home computers or not completely secured computers. So we did. I don't know the exact cases. So if, for example, there are some hack attempts, but let me maybe go back to the split horizon part, because I told you that there is a split horizon dilemmas. Let me explain this more detailed, because split horizon means that the end computer, the workstation or the PC, is the proxy, right? Because it has a direct connection to the internet, and at the same time, this computer has a direct connection to the resources, the corporate resources. And that's the reason why the customers are very afraid to allow the private computers to access the resources. But from the other side, the business told them, you have to do this. I know that this is increased risk, but we need to manage this risk. And unfortunately, we need to accept this risk, because otherwise the company will stop immediately. So it's better to run the company in the riskier environments than simply waiting for the end of pandemic. As we know now, this we can wait for much longer than we previously thought. So yeah, there was a big concern about this, and I think that most of the customers needed to accept this risk and hoping that this risk will not materialize. So I mean that such a breaches will not happen.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chmielewski. That was all about the questions that we have. If we receive some more, we'll send it to you.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you very much.
thank you.